But it says here, Jonah found a ship going to Tarshish in verse 3, so he paid the fare thereof, went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So when Jonah didn't like what God was saying, he said, I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to pay my fare, get on the Greyhound bus, and I'm getting away from God because that's not what I'm going to do. Okay? And it says in verse 4, but the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. The ship was like to be broken. So Jonah's in a ship and running away from God. And the reason why the tempest has come is because Jonah is running away from God. And God has created a storm to stop Jonah from going from wherever he's going. Meaning that God doesn't always come down, take your hand and say, listen, no, you're going the wrong way. He doesn't do that. What God does, he creates circumstances. God creates circumstances in your life, and everybody's saying, I don't know why this is going on. Sometimes God will put circumstances in your way to either turn you around or to get your attention or redirect you to where he needs you to go because you're going the wrong way. And God doesn't always put red lights right there and things like that and stop signs. He uses circumstances. Okay? He uses circumstances. So in this point, there's a great tempest in the sea that rises about. And think about it now. This tempest is there only because of Jonas. And not just that. There's other people, innocent bystanders, in the ship that Jonah has decided he wants to get in. Let me say this. Do you know that when you go away from God and you connect yourself with certain things in life, you actually put other people's lives at danger? You don't know that, do you? You actually put other people's lives in danger because when God is trying to get your attention, God cares more about you and working his plan out that if he has to do some things, some circumstances around you, he will do it. So it says that the ship was like to be broken, meaning that God allowed it to get down to the point where it was getting ready to get destroyed. But notice it said like to be broken. God didn't allow it to break, but he got it down to its breaking point. See, that's where a lot of people say, now, right now, I'm at my breaking point. Where I'm at a point where I feel like I'm getting ready to give in. But it said like to be broken. Meaning that God didn't allow it to be broken. He allowed it to get to what they consider the worst case scenario in the storm. In the worst case scenario. And it says in verse 5, the mariners were afraid and cried every man unto his God. Meaning there were other men on the ship, and when the storm came, the men started to cry out to their gods. In the Bible showing little g, not for the big G-O-D, which we serve, but little gods. So every man started crying out to his gods with the S on it, meaning there are people on there crying to every different god that you can possibly name of, statue, whatever god they had made of. They probably had whatever they wore around their necks. They prayed, then they began to cry out to their God because they were in this great storm. And every man cried out to his God. And it says they began to cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea. Meaning that as the ship was getting ready to sink, they started throwing things overboard. The ship's getting ready to sink. They're throwing things overboard, crying out to their God because they're trying to lighten the ship because they probably got all their things there. They're trying to make the ship light. But little do they know, that's not going to help because the reason that the storm is there has nothing to do with them. But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. Do you remember in the Bible where the disciples were in the same predicament, and Jesus was in the back of the boat asleep also?
That's right.
Meaning that Jesus was not worried or ruffled or shaken by the storm. But the men in the ship were. Remember, they came and woke up Jesus. They came and woke Jesus, and they said, Jesus, Master, don't you care if we perish? Because they wanted Jesus to start getting the bucket and scooping the water out and throwing the bucket out. They're like, what are you doing? We perishing, and here it is. You're taking a nap. You're sleeping through the storm. Why aren't you crying out to your God? Why aren't you doing something about this? And it says Jonah was late. He was fast asleep, and he was knocked out. And it says, so the shipmaster came to him, which is Jonah in verse 6, and said to him, what meanest thou, O sleeper? Or basically say, what are you doing? We drowning. Why are you here asleep? He said, arise, call upon thy God, if so be that God will think upon us that we perish not. So he tells Jonah, Jonah, listen, I need you to get up, whoever you are, call on your God, because that's what everybody else is doing. They're calling on their God, and maybe your God will look upon us that we may not flee, because everybody's calling on all these different gods. So he finds Jonah and says, listen, we need you to call on your God. Now, I'm not sure how religious these people were, but they never told him, Jonas, we need you to come and help throw some of the stuff off the ship or help throw some of the water out. They say, call on your God. They say, call on your God, because obviously the storm that was going on required help from God and not of man. So they say, you need to call on your God. Verse 7. And they said, everyone to his fellow, come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. The men have gotten superstitious now. They're saying that, because listen, when it storms and when it rains, we always draw up a reason. We always say there's a reason for everything. That's what these men are thinking. They said the only reason why we're going through this storm is because somebody has done something. And we need to find out who that somebody is, address that issue, and that's going to be the cause of the storm. Now, when I'm in traffic and it's raining and I'm stuck in traffic, I don't think that it's because of anything that I have done that the weather is bad. When you're in a house and the rain is beating upon your house and the lights cut out, do you begin to think that it's something you have done bad that the weather is beating upon the house and the lights are out? No. You just thinking that God is at work. That's just nature. But the men said, let's cast lots. Casting lots was a way, a lot of people explain as a way of gambling. But let me explain to you this way, where it was explained to me in school, was that they had straws they would take. They had like a whole bunch of short and long straws, and whoever would pick the shortest straw, that's who they felt like would be the, they would cast the blame on. So they got these straws out. And everybody started pulling from the straw. And they probably said, listen, whoever gets the shortest straw, this is the person's fault, who it is. And you're thinking like, can that really be happening? Because it's almost like a gamble. But it says here, then so in verse 7 it says, so they cast lots that we may know whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots and the lot fell upon Jonah. Just so happened, he picked the short straw. Right. You mean to tell me that we do a raffle in here, and all of a sudden, and we say we're going to do a raffle to find out who stole something. Right. And the person that stole it actually draws the ticket from the raffle out of 100 names in a hat. That's God. Yeah. That's God right there. So they said, well, and they found it, and they said, well, this is Jonah. You're the man. You're the reason for the storm. Man, let me tell you. When they found out that he was the reason for the storm, listen what they asked him. Verse 9, they said unto him, in verse 8, they said to him, tell us, we pray thee, for what cause this evil is upon us. They basically said, Jonah, please tell us, what have you done that this storm is like this? What have you done that this storm and all this has come about to us? I remember, I don't know what story it was, but it's like you ever be around somebody, you say everywhere you go, it's like a black cat is around you. Everywhere you go, you bad luck to a hunting dog. You know, you say you just got bad luck all the time around you. Everywhere you go, you just create problems. You ever be one of the people that everywhere you go, nothing just goes right? Let me tell you, because it wasn't meant for you to fit in where you're at. Because you're running from your calling, you're running from your purpose. And whenever God has called you to do something for him, you will never fit in anywhere else. Not for a long time anyway. For the people that want to cast you out. Have you ever been, and I wonder, sometimes it is good to be an outcast. It is good not to fit into certain things. It is good to be an outcast. It is good not to be accepted by certain things, because the thing that you want to be accepted by is not good enough for you anyway. The people that you want to be accepted by, take that again, are not good enough for you anyway. Meaning you know good, meaning that God has a greater plan for you. So they're asking Jonah, what is it that you've done? And then they go to ask him again. They say, What is thine occupation? What is your job? What is it that you do? Are you a thief? Are you a robber? What have you done? Have you blasphemed God? And then they say, where do you come from? They want to know, where does he come from? Meaning that maybe wherever you come from is a curse on your people. Where do you come from? Then they also ask them this. They say, and what is thy country? What country are you from? And they said, and what people are thou? So they ask them all these questions. They're grilling because they want to get to the bottom of this. They want to find out why this storm is upon them. He said unto them, I am a Hebrew, for I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which have made the sea and the dry land. Jonah comes out and tells them, he said, listen, I'm a Hebrew. And the people know the Hebrews, they know that the Hebrews serve a God of the unseen, and they used to make fun of the Hebrew people because they served an invisible God. And they said they don't serve a God made with man hand, they serve a God, and they looked at them to be crazy. They said, but Jonah said, I serve the God who has made the land and the sea. Jonah has some spirituality about him because Jonah is basically saying this to me. The reason why I felt like as a type of Christ he was because in the midst of the storm, he was asleep. But he knew that the God that he served created the land and the sea, and he was not disturbed by it because he knew that his God had authority over all that stuff. Yeah. And he began to tell them, saying, listen, I'm a Hebrew, I serve the God of heaven, who's controller of the land and the sea. So he's telling them about his God as if they don't know. Mm-hmm. Now he begins to, listen to this, in the midst of the storm, he begins to testify of God, what God wanted him to be doing from the beginning. Now he comes to himself, and now he tells the people who he is. See, in the midst of the storm, when you're with people you're not supposed to be with or walking unworthy, God will allow you to start, he will reveal himself to you, and the next thing you know, you will reveal who you are in God to other people. And this is what he's doing right now. He's revealing who God is. I don't know if he's trying to bring about a calm, because the men are grilling him right now. They want to know what's going on. So what happened is, then when Jonah said that in verse 10, the men were exceedingly afraid. Now the men were afraid, but these are the same men that were crying out to their own God. But now these men are afraid. You know, I mean, have you ever been, I don't know how people are today, but I remember before, man, we used to tell people that you went to church and all that type of stuff, and some of God, they would become fearful. These men here feared and respected God, and now they're fearful. And what they say in verse 10, they said unto him, why have you done this? And it says, for the men knew that he had fled from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. So he told the men everything that we read in the beginning when God told him to go cry against Nineveh and speak against that great city. He told this to the men in the ship, and now the men are afraid, and they're saying, like, why would you flee from your God if your God has told you to do such thing? Why are you here with us? Why would you come around us knowing that you have this great call, and now your God, because of your disobedience, have brought this upon all of us? Mm-hmm. Let me tell you this. I was talking to a guy the other day, and we were telling him a little about a relationship and some things, and I told him, I said, listen here, man, if you continue therein in that relationship, you're going to bring damnation and condemnation on that woman because of you. Because if you move outside of God's plan and you're doing something in a relationship that you're not supposed to be in, you're going to bring trouble on that person you're with. As what Jonah is doing right now. These people are innocent bystanders, but he's bringing this trouble upon them because of his disobedience. And you say, well, why would